So, Johnny Choda, can I start with a serious question, if you don't mind? Have you any samples with you?
I have a lot of samples with me.
Johnny,
I never miss an opportunity.
Is this what Charlie was talking about, the cocktail of financing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a very different sort of structure and history and story than we have with our previous presenters here. But I think for us, it's very much been a case of finding our way in the market in Northern Ireland in terms of what's available in terms of financing. And first and foremost, it started with a private equity investment and going out to find a private equity partner, which has been critical to our growth. And
tell us a little bit about the time scale. I mean, when were you just bubbling under, and when did you then decide to go to the market?
I think for us, I personally joined the business in late 2011, and the sequence for myself and Alison Hogg, who's the founder of the business, was to put a solid business plan together, to understand within ourselves what our strategy was for growth, be very clear in terms of the product development that we had, the markets that we're going to, the channels and the markets that we're going to, and believe in the plan, then go out to find a partner and look for what opportunities in terms of investment that were out there. So for us to find a private equity partner, it was very important to find the right partner that's going to work with us, grow with us, and I think also getting the right chemistry with the right partner was critical as well.
But what about letting go, for any Frozen fans out there, having to let go of total control of your own business?
Huge issue, absolutely huge issue for us, and I won't lie about that. It's been a real challenge, I think, for myself as a small investor in the business, but certainly for Alison as the CEO, I think it was the single biggest challenge for her, and a real concern and apprehension about what lies ahead in terms of control, in terms of day-to-day running of the business. And I have to say, with Broadlake Capital, and Tom sitting next to me here, but I have to say that with these guys, it's been an absolute partnership all the way. There's been no issues around control in terms of day-to-day running of the business. We've been pretty much left to run the business ourselves. I think these guys are a good advertisement for how private equity can work very well with a company when it's growing, you know.
Well, that moves us on nicely then to Tom Smyth from Broadlake. What is your role in the company now?
I sit on the board of Vita. I got to know the company first in 2011. We get involved really at the strategic crossroads in the business. We don't look to get involved with the day-to-day. We don't look to interfere. We see ourselves very much as supporting. We invested in the business because we believed in what is a fantastic management team that are hugely ambitious, driven, are jump on planes and just make things happen. Why would we actually want to interfere with that? Why would we want to change, to affect any form of change of control on that? I think the control piece is actually a huge myth, that it's a paranoia that a lot of SMEs actually genuinely have. But a private equity investor will not look to take control of a business. If you think that on an operational day-to-day point that control sits in a shareholders agreement, you're deluded in many respects. It's about the trust, the partnership, and having a clear alignment of interests between the company, the investor, and that everybody's pulling together to achieve the goal.
And does your company have a kind of minimum stake, or is there like a sliding scale? How much influence or whatever stake do you like to have in people you invest in?
Well, for us, we look to invest between 1 and 10 million of equity into businesses. Whether we're flexible to take a minority or a majority stake. One thing I will say is there's a raft of funding options out there for SMEs, be it equity, be it mezzanine finance, be it debt, invoice financing. And I would encourage you to talk to as many providers as possible. And from an equity point of view, it is a partnership, it's a very personal thing. So it's down to you actually getting on well with the people you're going to be working with on a day-to-day basis.
Neil, tell us your part in the story.
Well, I think we were approached in November 13. Tom and Johnny approached us really. At that stage, the guys were already involved. The bank was also involved. And I suppose there was still a funding need or a funding requirement really for the guys to go into the next stage of growth. And so they approached ourselves looking for a loan from White Rock Capital Partners.
And again, what is your sort of day-to-day role, etc.?
Yeah, we are probably even more hands-off than maybe Tom. We don't take a seat on the board, and we don't have day-to-day involvement in the business. I guess after we invest in a business, we ask for a monthly management pack, and we have sort of quarterly or semi-annual meetings with the business to catch up. And really that management pack gives us some visibility into the business. You know, we don't have access to a current account that a bank may have for an indication in the performance. So really we rely on that communication to understand the trends within the business, and really to help work through any difficult periods that the business might encounter post our investment.
And back to you, Johnny. I mean, from your small premises in Ballyclare, what has this additional funding allowed you to do globally?
I think that's a very important question to ask. I think through early 2012, just going back to the very start of the process with private equity initially, I think it allowed us to seed the market, particularly in the US. One of the biggest leaps forward we've made in the past 24 months has been to grow internationally, from an organic growth within the UK and our key partners there. For us to make that step change into getting international markets, it really required a significant amount of funding. And the combination of the Bank of Ireland, with somebody mentioned invoice financing earlier, I think Raymond mentioned a few times, for us it was also critical, but getting that mezzanine finance through from White Rock and the investment through from private equity with Broadlake, the combination of all three together was absolutely critical, both in terms of investment in seeding the market, marketing spend, stock, all those things in terms of resources as well, and putting infrastructure in place to grow those markets. They were never going to happen without a combination of all these three types of fund.
And so the funds are paying for different things, whether it be stock or marketing?
Absolutely. I think at the very early stages for us, it was a case of getting the equity investment first of all, and that enabled us to put some of the infrastructure in place and put some of the initial stock builds in place. I think as we went through our first phase of growth into early 14, having the White Rock funds there and follow-on funds indeed into early part of this year has enabled us to take the next step in terms of growth as well. So looking at a fourfold growth in the last 3 years and a huge stepping stone into 15 for us was only going to come about through this combination of funding. And the cocktail of funding, as Charlie mentioned earlier, is absolutely critical.
And the question I asked Raymond as well, I mean, why did you choose these guys? I take it you shopped around a bit?
We sure did. I think in early 12, I think for us, and certainly for Alison, if she's sitting here today, she would say it was all about finding the right partner with the right chemistry. You know, for us, you know, a local Irish private equity partner available was fantastic to have somebody locally who understood us, understood the culture, and also had the same growth alignment that we had as well in terms of our ambitions. And that's, I think, the key for us is making sure, going back to the point someone made earlier, but understanding your business. For us, it was crucial that they understood our business. And these guys, and Tom and Pete, took time to come and understand tanning. I mean, it was alien to them, it was alien to me before I joined, but they made an effort. You know, they went out there, and even a couple of those guys even got tan, I think, possibly.
That's our secret, Johnny.
Okay. So, you know, they went through the experience, absolutely. They lived the dream, you know. They actually went out there and got a tan. So I needless to say, still have mine on, so it still worked. So, but they've done a great job in getting and understand the business, right. And that for us is very important.
I've just realised I've really slipped up on my research for this interview. Then, Tom, what was it that attracted you to Johnny and Neil as well? What was it about the company?
Well, if I look back to when I originally met Alison and Colin and Johnny, what we really liked about the business was the people, predominantly. You know, the fact that it's a really strong management team with a great track record, that we're doers. We're happy. They see themselves as, you know, from a small base in Ballyclare, we can go and we can out-innovate companies like L'Oreal and Revlon that are huge companies with huge marketing spends. They can out-innovate, they can compete for retail space because it is a consolidated market. So you've got to get your product on a shelf. You've got to knock someone else's product off that shelf. Someone has deeper pockets, someone that's part of a huge corporate with all kinds of different spends. So we really thought it was an exceptionally strong management team. It was a great product range, and we could see great growth for the business. The challenge really when it comes to growth is when we look at Vita Liberata's market, we're dealing with retailers that are happy to grow by 2, 3, 4% per annum. That's not good enough for us. We've grown on 35% per annum for the last 4 years. So that's not good enough. So they might say to us, Boots might say, well, you're out competing, you know, you're outperforming our market. That's not good enough. So that's why we have to go international. We have to find other routes to market, to out-innovate. And that involves huge personal commitment on behalf of Alison and Colin. But one thing I think is ironic is the fact that we're here at an InterTrade event and how much support that, I know if Alison would echo this, how much support organisations like InterTrade, InvestNI, banks, White Rock, etc., have given to Vita. That it's, to me, I think it's a great case study for how you can actually grow a business into an international brand from a place like, it's not London, it's not Paris, it's not New York, it's Ballyclare.
I like it.
Yeah, likewise. I mean, when we came across Vita, it was a very impressive company, a local SME that was exporting to over 25 countries, I think, at that stage. It had a strong product brand and exciting product development as well, and very much demonstrating high growth. And that's what we're looking for, Mark. You know, businesses, local businesses here who can demonstrate high growth potential. Again, we place an emphasis certainly on the strong and experienced management team that Vita have in there, along with Broadlake already being in. You know, this is a good example of equity, and when businesses are looking for equity, they should be thinking about what skill sets they're getting alongside the money investment from any equity. And obviously the guys, you know, with Tom's background in this sector as well, was very beneficial. Looking as well at their debtor book, you know, blue chip debtors, as Johnny said in the video there, you know, Sephora USA, Sephora Europe Boots. But very importantly for us also was the fact that the guys, the management team, had a clear, concise plan on how they were going to scale up. And that's very important for any business out there. And I think Charlie mentioned it as well. You know, you really need to sit down and go through and put together a business plan and have a concise vision of how you're going to take your business forward.
Thanks. Johnny, back to you. The whole issue of red tape, the amount of time, the amount of effort people are going to have to invest to go through this, and back to what I said earlier, what would you say to people who are thinking, actually, I just want to stick and consolidate where I am?
Yeah, I think Tom's echoed the culture of ambition within our team and our management team. I don't think any of us, myself, Alison, Colin, would ever have stood still and settled for a 2, 3, 4, 5% organic growth in this company. That was never on the agenda. So for us, it was always about a huge leap forward, and that required a lot of investment very early on, and also a quick response from our investee partners, you know, whether it be Bank of Ireland, who have responded very quickly in terms of restructuring and invoice financing. I think the guys in White Rock here have been phenomenal in terms of their response to us in both funding rounds we had with them, and equally with Broadlake through the first and additional funding rounds. We found with them that they were actually stepping up even before the formal investments were made to try to help support us through our early growth stages. So for us, it's all about time. It's rush, get the funds in as quick as possible, you know.
Yeah, but how long did the whole process take?
I guess there's 3 or 4 different phases of process went on here. If you take the first one with the private equity, I think we went through a process of 3-4 months of putting business plans together. I think after that it was probably 60 days or something, maybe even less, 60 days, in terms of getting the funds in. With White Rock, the process was phenomenally short. It was probably between 4 and 6 weeks. I think we got our first running through, and the second, again, 4 to 6 weeks as well. And the same with the bank, to be honest. It was very quick. Weeks, a matter of weeks, really.
I think it's an interesting point, just the whole business plan, the fact that you have to have a plan. If you ask me what we look for in companies, you know, we look for a plan. You know, we look to support entrepreneurs' plans, and that's hugely important. You know, where are you looking to get to? What are your milestones? How can we help you get there? If there's no plan, it's very difficult, because you're effectively a little bit like Forrest Gump. You're just running around and you don't really know why you're running around. You're just running.
Right.
I would add to that as well, you know, the importance of using professional advisors for the plan. I mean, we see a direct correlation between successful applications to the Growth Loan Fund that have been prepared by professional advisors and those that aren't.
Okay, before we open it to the floor, what's in at the moment, guys? What are you looking at, apart from fake tan? What are the growth industries out there?
Okay, well, I'll talk from a Broadlake point of view. I spend a couple of days a week in Northern Ireland. I see a number of fantastic SME businesses here in areas like manufacturing, food, healthcare, support services. We just about to complete another investment in a manufacturing business in Northern Ireland, which we're very excited about. Not fake tan, and we won't be trying to get them to do any fake tan. I don't think that's their skill set. But we're very excited about it. So that's where we see the opportunities. Yeah, we're very varied, to be honest, Mark. You know, we'll look at the traditional types of manufacturing, engineering businesses through to the likes of Vita Liberata. We've coffee roasting companies, we've energy companies. It really is very varied for ourselves, and really we're just looking at any established businesses that have high growth potential out there.
Okay, and just while you're on the mic, before we open it to the floor, Neil, is there a planned exit strategy for the equity investors?
I guess I'll answer that one. We're structured a little bit differently in that we're a family investment group, so we can afford to take a very long-term view of our investments. We're not forced to give money back to investors, and we think that's important. We see ourselves as being perfectly aligned with Alison, Colin, and Johnny in growing the business. So we don't, you know, we typically look to entrepreneurs to tell us when the exit is, rather than us dictating. And we think that's quite important.
So there's nothing written down in terms of a deadline?
No.
No. Neil?
No, I mean, for ourselves, our structure is a 5-year term loan. So it is 5 years is whenever we step out of the business, essentially, Mark.
Okay, great. We have the microphone. Any questions? Oh, this is our favourite row. This is our question row.
Hi. Maybe a question for Johnny. You were saying you went or you considered a lot of different types of loans. What about crowdfunding? Is that a fad? I mean, an eye-catching business like yours, was that something you looked at?
Yes, it is one of the things we looked at when we went through, particularly looking for mezzanine finance. We looked at alternatives out there. I think at the time for us, probably the immediacy of the requirement for the funding was probably more important than anything else, and certainly having someone like White Rock out there who are fairly established, and we could see clear visibility in terms of mezzanine and repayment and so on. For us, it was an easier option, to be honest with you. But yes, of course, the alternatives we could look at as well. And we're always looking to see whether there's a different cocktail out there for us.
They actually use crowdfunding, or is it just an idea? I mean, any examples?
I mean, some companies have used it very, very successfully. The likes of the beer brand Brewdog have raised a phenomenal amount of money through crowdfunding. Typically tends to work better with consumer goods businesses where they're quite visible consumer goods businesses. I think, if I'm honest, there's a lot of hype around it. So if realistically, if you have a need, by all means explore all different options, but I'd be careful about how realistically, if you have a need for a fixed amount of money, that is, call it $500,000 plus. I think unless you have an established consumer good brand in the market, I don't think it's straightforward just to raise that money from scratch, if I'm honest.
Yeah, we also have a couple of companies within our portfolio who would have used crowdfunding, but generally it would be at the smaller end, where they've raised maybe not the 50,000 in crowdfunding.
Thank you.
Okay. Any more from the floor? Any more from the floor? Here's a good question, Johnny, for you. Why did you need another equity partner when you already had one? Was there buy one, get one free sale on or something?
So, well, just in terms of equity partner, I mean, obviously we just primarily work with Broadlake, but in terms of White Rock for us,
yes,
having a mezzanine finance partner in there was critical to get that balance right for us, because I guess from a owner-founder point of view, Alison and myself, there's only so much equity you want to give away in terms of business, so if there's another route to financing, you prefer that as well.
Okay. And from your point of view, guys, do you have, I think we maybe sort of covered this, well, we haven't really, it says, have any of the panel used Vita Liberata products?
Guilty.
No, but well assured by my wife that it's good.
Right, okay. But have you a sort of set level of minimum amount of money that a company is actually making in terms of a turnover? I mean, just how big does the company have to be before you would consider investing in them?
Sure, I'll take that one first. For ourselves, I suppose when we're assessing businesses and companies, we're really assessing the risk profile of the proposal, Mark. We're an unsecured lender, and that's how we differ from say, the banks out there. Key for us is that we're able to demonstrate repayment ability. So we're really looking at established businesses. However, we're perfectly happy to invest in younger businesses, given that they have an income stream that can support loan repayments. So it's not really based around a specific level of turnover, more so that the business has a repayment ability for our loan.
And what about security, etc., for both of you?
For ourselves, security is not an issue. As I said, we're an unsecured funder, so it's not something that we take. So it's not an issue for ourselves. We really look at the other aspects of the business, the management team, the product or service, the marketplace, the financials, the track record, etc.
Tom?
And I guess for us, we invest in established businesses. We invest in, if you look across the board at kind of venture capital, private equity, we'd invest in kind of typically established businesses that have established products and customers. So there's no minimum turnover level, but probably in reality it's 2-3 million turnover as a minimum level. So there are some great funds out there that in the Northern Ireland market that do invest earlier stage, that do focus on the earlier stage technology-based investments. And I'd encourage people in that space to go talk to them today, but it's just not particularly our space.
Okay, a couple more questions. We've got our first one on our southern number. Keep them coming in. A couple of last questions. Johnny, was the due diligence process for Vita very distracting?
Yeah, it was certainly challenging. I think I've had worse in previous lives. I think with the guys with Broadlake, I think it was thorough. And I think for me, it was all much more around the commercial diligence. And that, to me, gave me confidence as well. These guys were going to be a long-term partner because they were asked the right questions through that diligence process. So it was less of a box-ticking exercise. And going back to the point Ray made about the lawyers as well, it was less about going through that legal process than it was with commercial diligence. So a thorough commercial diligence, you have to expect that. Yeah.
Another good personal question for you. Had you any experience of taking a company through a real growth phase, similar to what you've had with Vita?
Yes, I have actually. I worked with another local company in Northern Ireland for quite a few years, which most people will be familiar with, which is Ben Sherman. So I worked with them through a phenomenal growth phase, through a 10, 15-year period that went from like $2.5 million to $100 million business, effectively. Yeah.
See, I wonder if whoever asked that question is asking it, Tom and Neil, from the point of view of, is that one of the questions you're going to be asking as well?
Well, I think management is key to us, the people, and the fact that Johnny, it was so experienced in an unrelated market in many respects, but in a growing business. He was a very, seasoned, well experienced COO, CFO. So that is reassuring, if I'm honest. Particularly the one thing is, we have very good kind of reporting in the business, which is key, which is where a lot of, I think, SMEs struggle communicating with banks, equity funders, and mezzanine providers like White Rock. Is you just need to be communicating in terms of monthly management accounts to understand where the levers are in your business.
Okay, technical question. What's the difference between VC and private equity?
Okay, VC or venture capital typically will invest in earlier stage, often technology, life science type businesses with typically high levels of IP, but earlier stage. Private equity will typically invest in later stage businesses and won't be as necessarily as tech centric.
Okay. Any more questions from the floor before we wrap up? Okay, just final thoughts from you, Johnny. Charlie talks about this cocktail. I mean, the other way of looking at the cocktail of funding is it just feels a bit messy. What would you say to people who think that?
I think if you're in control of the process through that period of growth, it doesn't become messy. It hasn't been a distraction for us. I think the very early initial stage equity investment, yes, that was complex. There was a process involved there. There was a lot of pain going through having to give up equity for the founders of the business. I think the banking side of it, in terms of working with Invoice Finance, worked with the Bank of Ireland, I don't think that was overly cumbersome, to be honest. I think the guys were very cooperative through the process, worked very closely with us. And as I said earlier with White Rock, for me, it was a very straightforward process. And going back to Tom's point about communication and having a strong business plan, I think if you can prepare a business plan that's been thoroughly thought through, I think the questions tend to be a lot less from them, and they've got confidence in your ability to deliver on repayment. So it actually hasn't been a major distraction for a business, if I'm honest.
Thanks, Johnny. And final question for Neil and Tom. Back to where we started about the current funding environment. You would concur it is good?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we've certainly seen a change in mindset from business owners out there in relation to alternative funding and equity. As Charlie's alluded to, we're seeing more and more of those cocktail of funding where you've got the bank, providing senior debt. You've got an element of mezz and private equity, and no better example than Vita Liberata, really. I think certainly in the last 12 months, we've seen a lot more proactiveness from the banks again, which has been great, and I think it's really stifling activity back in the marketplace.
Sorry, if I could just add that I'm a huge fan of the White Rock Fund, and I think it's fantastic, the opportunity that it provides to Northern Ireland SMEs I'm based in Dublin. We don't have a fund like this in Dublin. We could badly do with one.
And Tom, final question for you. What would you say to someone that's been inspired by this morning and is on the edge and is thinking, I'm going to go home, I'm going to sleep on it, it's going to be a risky process, I'm going to meet Tom tomorrow. What would that bit of advice you give to them to maybe tip them over the edge and go for it?
The fact that we don't bite.
What a sound bite to finish on. Ladies and gentlemen, to our panel, thank you very much indeed.